got to the point where I felt like I didn't want to wake up the next day.
Society has put so much pressure on mothers. How dare you be unhappy?
They didn't know how to deal with me. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to carry on. Mums need to put themselves first. The mum is the most important. If the mum is not right, then the baby is not right. We are like, mum, you can do all, be all, 100% everything. And mums are really not fine. You should be grateful for everything you've got.
You can't go around it. You can't avoid it. You can't pretend it's not going to go away.
I really felt like she had been put on this planet to, mess everything up.
I think more people should know this, but I might get torn apart for saying this out loud. A very warm welcome to Kim Hartwell on Love and Fit Science. Hey Kim, how are you?
Hello, Sal. Thank you so much for having me here today.
So everyone, Kim is a dear friend of mine and has actually got so much to share. She's not only a personal trainer, but she's also helping a lot of people with the power of breath work. And the reason why I wanted to particularly bring her on the show is because one of the topics we haven't really dived into, and I know it can help a lot of people, is talking about this journey of becoming a parent. And Kim has a particularly powerful story in this regard. So Kim, I'm going to hand over to you. Tell us everything that's happened and how you got from where you were to where you are now. It's so important for people to know, because I think a lot of people go through what you went through and they haven't actually felt that it's safe to even express themselves fully in this very delicate subject.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head with that in terms of just it's the motherhood journey can be really isolating and you can feel very alone. But the more I speak to mums, the more I realize it's just because we don't feel like we can be safely held in that space. And so I guess like looking from the outside, pre-motherhood, I've now got a nearly 3-year-old, but pre-motherhood, it kind of looked like maybe I had like my ducks in a row. I think I felt like I didn't, but like, I was modeling, I was working for my favorite fitness brands, I was doing my PT and yoga retreats around the world. And I think I want to say naively, I kind of thought when I have a baby, if I'm lucky enough to have a baby, then I'll just bring her along for the fun. And I think that in this modern day society, we are too quick to just say to people, just get on and have kids. And I really felt that pressure. And I think I always knew I wanted kids, but I've never been that person who absolutely idolizes the idea of having kids. I just thought that probably would be something that I'd like to do. And I'll be the first to admit that we probably jumped into it too quickly, but I was at an age where it sort of seemed to make sense. There was COVID going on, and I kind of was like, well, if not now then when? And we were very fortunate enough, and I say that knowing that it's, a heartfelt going out to people who don't fall pregnant as easily as we did, but we fell pregnant so quickly that it was within the first month of trying. And really there was quite a deep shock that came with that, in that I wanted the baby, but I didn't really have those kind of moments where the period came and I longed for the baby, or I'd really wrapped my head around what the impact of it would be on my life, like in a very logistical way. Or the problem is that society doesn't even allow space for this conversation, the idea of matrescence, like going from maidenhood to motherhood. And because of that, I really didn't know what a slap in the face it was going to be for me. And I think I had this kind of life that I created, and it was my own business that I, had put a lot of effort into making how I loved living. And all of a sudden, overnight, that felt like it was taken from me. And there wasn't very much in the sphere of helping me and tending to my journey from going from not being a mum to being a mum. And in society, we talk a lot about the kids, and we talk a lot about making sure they're okay, and that the mum should just be happy. And this, there was this perfect storm of not really having a village around me, which many mums struggle with. There was what do I do now with my identity? What does this mean for me? If my life before was going around the world, teaching retreats and helping people in studios, and now feel like I'm confined to my house, like where does this leave me? And this is a long-winded way of saying it, but eventually I kind of pushed down everything I knew, any of my sense of self. I stopped kind of vouching for myself, and I just thought, okay, well, this is just what it's supposed to be. I need to tick the boxes. The conditioning of society has taught me that I should have a baby. We should probably get a mortgage. I should go to the suburbs. And that's that's what you do, and there's no veering off of that. It's kind of frowned upon. And I really kind of was like, okay, I'll hold my hands up. I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am anymore. This is just motherhood, and I'll just, ride it out, and hopefully it'll be okay. And the reality of it was, it really wasn't okay. And I think the culmination of many different factors was the perfect storm for me to get into a really bad mental health state. And it was one of those things where I knew things weren't right, but it took a real rock bottom to realize how not right it was. And for me to start kind of insourcing my power once again, and realizing that I could, find my alignment and find who I was, and find what this new life could look like in a really beautiful way. But I couldn't see that at the time. And I guess the biggest thing for me was that I got to the point where I felt like I didn't want to wake up the next day. It got really, really, really bad. And I've been quite honest with my journey online, just because I think that there isn't enough of this conversation going on. I think it's, as soon as people started realizing I wasn't in a great space mentally, they didn't know how to deal with me. It was like, you're this kind of outlier who should love their baby, should be happy as Larry, and just get on, everybody else does. And I felt so isolated and so alone. And the answer for what most people wanted to give me is that I had a chemical imbalance and I had to go to the doctor for a blood test. That was about the extent of it.
And it was postnatal depression.
Yeah, for
Is
sure.
that what you were yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you were fully diagnosed with that, and then I guess that's the reason I wanted to bring you on the show, because I think a lot of people have postnatal depression, and because society has put so much pressure on mothers to be grateful that they've had a baby, they aren't really given the tools to know how to navigate it quite well. It's almost like frowned upon. How dare you be unhappy, even though you've got this miracle of life happening around you? And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show, because I think so many people can relate to this. And so, yeah, please continue. Tell us, like, what were the next steps, and how did you navigate this?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is people don't, because we don't talk about it, it goes very underground, and people don't know what to do about it either. So I had friends that, didn't know how to help. I had my mum that, didn't know how to help. And I think that's the sad thing, is that because we're feeling like these spaces aren't open to be able to say anything. Also, we have coaches that want to tell us to sleep better and to look after our self-care and all the rest of it. But when you're a mum, you have zero time. It really doesn't fit the bill. And so someone, like, we're seeing a lot of a massive rise of males in the breathwork industry. I think it's brilliant that the breathwork industry is growing anyway. But if there's a lot of males in the breathwork industry, or business coaches that are men, perhaps they don't quite understand what it feels like to really embody what it means to be a mother, and what you have to give up to and sacrifice to be a mother, and how you need your hand holding. It was always like in our ancestral days that you had your hand held, you had your women around you, your village, the people who would really be there, as very, very hands on. And we just don't have that, but we're expected to also now be businesswomen. So that was where this huge shift came, because I was just like, how am I supposed to even pick myself up from the floor and try and fathom the idea of going back into running my own business, when I feel like I literally can't face having a baby every day. And I think my biggest revelation for me was, I did a lot of work, right? So I did the inner work. I was very fortunate to have a therapist, but I also did a lot of yoga. I got way more into doing breath work. I did a lot more journaling. And really, by the time, I think probably for the last 6 months or so, I've been in such a better space, because I've really started to understand the significance of the nervous system. And I think the nervous system isn't very glamorous to talk about. It's having a little bit of a trend, but it's so much easier. When I've spoken to mum clients of mine, they are so much more interested in the physicality and getting themselves looking a certain way, because of the conditioning we've been expected to put on the smiley face. Everything's fine. We're happy. We're busy. Life, is carrying on. That you really start to understand the intricacies of stuff when you start to look at things through the lens of a nervous system. And I tried keeping my life as normal as I could. I, was always very adamant, like very into the gym. So I would go to the gym regardless of what was going on. I was breastfeeding, I was up all night, and I would still try and like shove my little baby into the creche for even half an hour, just to go and find my space to breathe and feel like I could get some sort of normality. And I think it was only, 6 months ago or so, I just had this light bulb, and I was like, wow, like, if my body is in a survival state, most of the time, which we worked out when I had my kind of very severe bout of postnatal depression. So basically, I'd been in that state for so long that it just collapsed and was like, I can't do it anymore. And if we don't listen to the body when it's telling us, it will have its way of showing up and telling us. And that in my form was that I couldn't get out of bed and I didn't want to carry on. And it was through knowing the power of the nervous system I started to really understand what was going on. And I think the biggest thing for me as well was I didn't really know there was things called mirror neurons, which you obviously know about. And I'd be like, wow, my toddler is absolutely mental. When she was a baby, I'd just be like, this baby is just calm, and they're screaming, they're shouting. I don't know what to do. I feel completely overwhelmed. And I honestly would like take her down to the creche at my gym, give her to the creche people and be like, deal with her. She's crazy. I'm going to go find some space and I'm going to come back and hope it gets better. And then they'd be like, she's been an angel. And I'd get so frustrated because I'd be like, what do you mean? Like, she's not an angel for me. And I think it really was when I started realizing how severely dysregulated I was constantly, that of course she was severely dysregulated. And we were both these dysregulated entities just firing off each other all the time. And yeah, it's been a real process for really, I think for my number one thing for mums, is just even having an awareness of where your state can be is really, really powerful. And one of the biggest ones for me, which my therapist spoke to me about, was with a window of tolerance. And that's by someone called Dr. Dan Siegel. And he talks about being able, we have a window, and it's your ability to deal with stress without becoming overwhelmed. And our window, the width of our window will always, it will be changing from day to day. And but we do have an ability to widen our window. So if you're someone like me last year who was dealing with quite a bad bout of postnatal depression, my window was very small. So it meant that I found it very hard to feel this, what we call state of regulation, where you're kind of more connected and you're a bit more organized state. And basically I was, we can find ourselves either going above our window, which is hypoarousal, which is more of the fight or flight kind of end of our nervous system, where we see the sympathetic energy, or we can go below our window of tolerance, which is our hypoarousal, which is when we're a bit more in our freeze state. And what happens is we're not supposed to be in those survival responses. So above our window and below our window is when we go into our survival responses in our nervous system. And that looks like a lot of different factors affecting our body, but essentially we're getting a lot of stress hormones flushing through our bodies. We're feeling, probably when I'm in a state of fight or flight mode, especially as a mum, I'm probably feeling quite a lot of chaotic energy. I might be over busying, probably quite agitated and reactive to my little one. And what we're finding in modern day society is we don't like to sit with our emotions, or we're not, we don't understand how incredibly important it is to allow emotions to move through us. So what we can often find ourselves in our coping mechanisms is to over busy ourselves and, do, put the smiley face on, keep calm, carry on, everything is fine. And that's what I was essentially doing for a really, really long time. Feeling, hugely guilty, always very on the border of being really angry and kind of getting these roller coaster of emotions of feeling really, upset, unfair, angry. And, these emotions are really potent emotions that we've been given for a reason. And what I found through my journey was I needed to listen to more of what that was telling me, because it's so hard to push. It's so easy to push them under the surface because they feel too scary to me if you're not used to it. I don't know about you, Sab, but I grew up in a generation of like, don't be mad, don't be sad, don't be angry, be happy, everyone's fine. So for me as a mum, I have done a lot of learning about kind of emotional intelligence and trying to help my daughter regulate her emotions, because that's what we're seeing as a really powerful tool that we can use to develop our children, and making sure that they experience the full spectrum of emotions and this, beautiful high, joys and sadness, because our emotions have been given to us for a reason. And I was feeling really angry a lot of the time and really sad a lot of the time because my needs were not being met, and because boundaries had been crossed. And I really, from the inner work that I've done through working with things like the window of tolerance, and even knowing the different factors that affect someone's window, how narrow, how wide it is, where I feel like I'm at in my window on a given day. We're always going to go through these different states of our nervous system. It's how we were born to live, is going through these states of fight or flight, freeze, regulation. But I think the most potent thing I've learned is that we're not ever supposed to live in the states of survival. And as you know, the hardest thing is we've now taught our bodies that the survival response, that survival mode that we're in, is our normal. So it's very hard to feel like you want to sit with these emotions or find more stillness, or maybe not go to the gym where you would normally go to the gym and just thrash it out. And I realize now that I was just constantly go, 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 go. And it's this kind of chaotic energy that was kind of constantly following me. And it's taken a lot of learning to work out like what pushes me out of my window of tolerance. What are the different factors that could, help mitigate me when I am in out of my window and feeling really dysregulated? How can I bring myself back into regulation? I have this thing called an allostatic load. If you stay in your state of dysregulation long enough, that's when your body starts to break down. And I think a lot of mums are going through that.
Oh, absolutely. It's crazy. One of the things that really shocked me when I started diving more into the nervous system and looking at the brain with a true magnifying glass, because one of my passions, is understanding that your thoughts and your feelings are a brain output based off of how safe your brain feels. And when I discovered that, I was like, wow. And it gave me a lot of compassion for people that are maybe nasty or overly anxious, or people that are difficult to deal with, because it made me realize that actually these people are just scared.
Yeah. And they have
And
their
that
own
gave me,
trauma.
people have their own trauma. And actually, even just in a moment, even if it's like not an obvious thing, the reason they're being horrible is because genuinely they're afraid. So the only way for them to protect themselves is to be mean or to be ugly or to say things that they don't mean. And so, yeah, that was very, very powerful. So it's really, really great that you've moved through this and that you've come to this realization. I guess one of the things that I'm really excited to see in your journey is the fact that you are now utilizing a lot of the tools that you use to help yourself, and you're actually helping other mums. You spoke about speaking of the window of tolerance to your clients and how that's helping them just recognize maybe what their triggers are. But you also speak about the mountain of motherhood. And that for me is such a beautiful metaphor, because it really is a journey, number one. And number two, it is an ever-changing landscape.
Yeah.
And you've got to make sure you're prepared for this hike, because it's the death march if you're not prepared. And so tell me, I know that's a bit of dramatic language for you, just to I went on a really tough hike once, and my brother and I called it the death march. That's where I got that from. So tell me a bit more about the mountain of motherhood, because I know that you've got some really exceptional tools that can help mums navigate I suppose the first part of the journey might even be the hardest.
Yeah, and it's I'm working on a course at the moment. It will be out very soon, called the Mountain of Motherhood, and I've been testing it with a lot of different mums. And what the main factor is, what we work with at the beginning is mapping your mountain. So it's that awareness piece. I think that that's literally, even if you take one thing away from today's podcast, it's just like the awareness of like how I'm feeling at a particular time and why I might be feeling that way. So when we talk about mapping our mountain, we're kind of working out where exactly on this mountain are we, and how does our mountain look? And that will be affected by things like your basic needs being met. And it seems like one of those things, of course, we need our basic needs met, but when you're a mum, there is some things you can control and then there is some things you can't. It's so frustrating when people are banging on the door, meaning like make sure you're getting your sleep. And it's like, not trying not to get sleep. It's just, it's just actually just
Not
how it
raving,
works.
guys.
Honestly, I'm not having fun with this. Honestly, it's not good. And so it's also about kind of working it out. We talk about bolstering our base camp and that kind of survival pack we can take with us to make sure that we can always anchor ourselves back home. And it's for me just working through. We kind of do our journaling, we work through kind of breathing exercises and kind of, physicality stuff as well. But the biggest thing I want people to take home from this course is kind of, where am I at on my mountain right now? So we talk about the top of the mountain being kind of above the window of tolerance, like we've said before, that fight or flight zone. So you're kind of thinking like you're struggling for breath, you're barely stepping one foot in front of the other, chaotic energy, you're really hyper vigilant, you're probably really reactive, like making sure there isn't like avalanches of emotions going on everywhere. Um, and, are you spending a lot of time at the top of your mountain in that state where you feel like you can't breathe and you're just keeping, your head swimming above the water? Or perhaps you're feeling more in your frozen response. And that's when we're kind of looking at getting into those crevasses, and you're feeling like, I want to do something, but I can't. You feel super trapped. You feel like I don't want to get out of bed in the day, and your body is slowing you down and kind of using its protective mechanism to really slow yourself down. And this is where we kind of get really clear on where we're at in terms of our nervous system lens, and kind of, are we at that fight or flight top of the mountain, or are we looking more at the bottom of the mountain in that crevasse? And how can we make ourselves feel like we're touching back to our base camp, really anchoring down, using this beautiful mechanism of our breath to know that we can always have the power. It's the one autonomic nervous system control that we can control, like all these other things in our nervous system that are all automatic. And the breath is one of those things that we can control, we can have power over. And even what we do throughout the courses, we're working out these different states. We're working out, when we're in that state of fight or flight, how can we bring ourselves back and down regulate ourselves back down to our base camp level? Or when we're in our freeze response, how can we up regulate ourselves to get ourselves moving and out of that crevasse? And what I always say to people as well, it's not about not climbing the mountain. So I don't want them just to stay at base camp, right? So it's like, life is for living. The mountain is for climbing and for, enjoying and savoring. And it's just about making our base camp feel wider and wider and wider in our window of tolerance, and packing our survival backpack, making sure our basic needs are being met. So, what other needs, so we're talking obviously sleep. Food is massive for mums. As soon as I started getting much more on the case with my nutrition, I really started to feel better. It's so hard when you're a mum, you don't have time. The idea of meal prep can be so overwhelming, but even if you're bulk buying, getting one of those kind of pre-ordered things in, whatever you can do to make sure your base of nutrition is there, you're going to set yourself up for a lot more success. Hydration, also, a lot of the time we're really irate because we haven't had a chance to even have some water. But also that kind of alignment with what's showing up for you and what do you need. So when we're regulated, it doesn't mean that we're always calm either. That's never happen as humans, but particularly as mothers. But also, what are your emotions that are showing up? What are they trying to tell you? So my anger was trying to tell me that something wasn't right. I wasn't living in alignment with what I wanted. My purpose, my dreams were all kind of feeling like they were getting squashed, and that I wasn't able to really kind of feel excited for life, and like I wanted to be here, and like I had a passion and a belonging and a need to be here. Yeah, belonging is a massive one, as well as, co-regulation is a huge one. Self-love to ourselves, but also feeling that connection to others. Even, it doesn't have to be thousands of followers, it has to be the real person. Our mutual best friend Belinda, I voice note her all the time, and we co-regulate each other. Even though we can't always be with each other, we're there. I feel held, I feel someone who's listening to me, and I'm really lucky to have someone who understands that sometimes we don't need things to be fixed, we just need to be held and listened to. But also the other forms of rest, like if you're not able to get physical sleep, how can you bring in your day to day other ways of resting? Like, I've taken a 2.5 hour bath with Indy because it was nice to just lay down, keep adding hot water and keep her confined. She was having a lovely time, and I was like, you know what, laying down this horizontal parenting is working for me today because I'm knackered. And I guess that's what we work through a lot in this course, is just like the ideas of how can we bring the different forms of rest into our sphere. So it's one of those things Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith speaks about, and she basically had a baby and was like, okay, when the baby sleeps all night, I'll feel rested and I can sleep and it's fine. But then she realized that she couldn't actually feel rest when she was resting because she had a million things going on in her mind and couldn't slow down. And she then did this beautiful study into the different forms of rest that aren't just the sleep, because as a mother, you don't have control over that. And she came up with the 7 forms of rest, which was like physical, mental, emotional, creative, sensory, spiritual, and social. And as a mum, a lot of those things can be missing, and that was a huge thing for me, an eye opener of what cups are missing that I can start to fill up again.
Amazing. And what would you say is the biggest shock revelation that you could share? What is something that through your journey you're like, I think more people should know this, but I might get, I don't know, torn apart for saying this out loud.
That mums need to put themselves first. I'm sorry, but I know the child is obviously extremely important, but at the first and foremost, the mum is the most important. They are the person that the baby is co-regulating with the most. So if the mum is not right, then the baby is not right. And in this society, in this patriarch, in capitalism, we are like, mum, you can do all, be all, 100% everything, and you'll be fine. And mums are really not fine. And I'm glad that this space is something that is being spoken about more. We are talking about matrescence more. You know, I speak to my neighbor and he's like, well, you know, my wife was fine. You should be grateful for everything you've got. And that really, it's that sort of, you know, well-meaning, but very underlying current that absolutely drowns us as mums.
I know. Well, I mean, even just all people. I remember talking on a podcast to someone about the fact that I went through quite bad depression through COVID, and he said, "Well, why didn't you just reframe what was happening to you?" And I was like, I know the concept of reframing, and I did try and do that, but when you're in such a dark mental space, that's not what's going to help you feel better. Like that's
No,
you can't think your way out of a dark mental space, but you can take action. And I think that that's what's been so cool about watching you, Kimmy, is that you've really taken action. You have actually been like,
so,
okay, like what are the things that bring me joy? What are the things that I need to do to actually, because something else that I wanted to mention, actually, I had this great revelation the other day. There isn't any way other than going towards the issue to resolve it. You
yeah,
can't go around it. You can't avoid it. You can't pretend it's not going to go away. You can't just hope for the best. The only way to resolve something that's a deep, dark thing that you need to sort out is to go directly towards it. And that's very uncomfortable and very painful. But going towards it is really the solution. And yeah, I just think going towards it with action takes a lot of courage.
yeah. And if all the parents listening going on a bear hunt, we're listening, we're thinking of that one as a bear hunt. Have you read that story? It's basically
No.
being like that they go on a bear hunt, and the whole thing is that you go through these obstacles and they're like, we can't go over it, we can't go under it, we have to go through it. And it's true. And it's like, the thing is, short term, going around it, over it, might feel like it's making it better. The coping strategies you're putting into place, like the drinking, the binging on food, the over exercising, the yeah, not ever allowing yourself space, blank space, it feels better. And honestly, it's easier to do that for a bit. One, your body will eventually say no. But two, I think that we are, it's in this, it's such an exciting sphere to be in, because I think we are talking about it an awful lot more, but in generations before us, we were not really in tune with our emotional intelligence. And for me, I found it very challenging because people like my mum and dad, like they were doing the best of what they knew, and we we distract kids when they feel sad or angry. We tell them, you know, go to your room, think about what you've done. And we now know, like, the science is proving that that just isn't the best for them developmentally, but it's leaving parents in a really tricky sphere, because what you're doing is you're trying to regulate and parent your child. And I had to reparent myself, especially with the emotional side of things, because I didn't know what it was like to have to feel safe to feel angry and feel safe to feel sad, really. And that's why things like breath work are so incredibly powerful, because it helps us. There's different spectrums of breath work, and I think it is getting quite a moment at the moment. And I've had to really explore this with the mums, because Sometimes the worst thing that they need is a really intense transformative breathwork practice. That can be literally their worst nightmare. If they're feeling like they're completely, as I was, really highly dysregulated, then kind of a more intense, stressful breath work that might conjure up a lot more stuff might not be the exact thing they need right there and then. So we talk about the different spectrums, and with a lot of the work I will be doing of the Mountain of Motherhood, we're going to be focusing a lot more on down regulation breathing. And that's just like to have the tools in place to know that when you are perhaps tapping out of your window of tolerance, how can you start to bring yourself back? I mean, even like today, it's funny, it all goes full circle. Like I used to spend, I know now looking back that I was severely dysregulated on a regular basis with in my house with my little girl. And I felt like a lot of the time I was really frustrated. I was getting irritated. I was really on edge an awful lot of the time. And like I was like, we talk about it on the Mountain of Motherhood of like teetering on the edge of this path of the mountain. And now I felt like I've been able to use all of these tools to bolster my path up the mountain. So it doesn't mean that I never fall off it or never have to, never go out of regulation, because that's just not a thing anyway. But it means that I am feeling more connected and more organized in my mental state, more able to deal with the stresses as and when they come up without feeling hugely overwhelmed and going into a spiral and staying stuck there. I have a lot of stuff going on because we're moving. And yeah, I noticed that I was like putting some of my normal practices and things that I found really, really helpful. I was just kind of letting them go by the wayside. I was getting back into my normal, what my nervous system craves is this chaotic energy and this kind of like chaotic normal that it's always had forever and a day up until hopefully the last, 6 months or so. It was craving that as it's normal. And, I just busy, 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 busy. And, it's obviously a lot of us are in that state because we can't always be in this state of calm and, breathing and meditation all the time. It's just not feasible. But what I noticed is that I was like, wow, I used to feel like this all the time. I'm not surprised that me and Indy, I honestly, it made me feel a bit sad as well, because I realized that I can't connect to Indy when I'm like that, my little girl. And it's really sad because sometimes when I look at the pictures of her when she's little, I was just like, wow, we didn't, obviously the connection grows as they grow up anyway. So I have a beautiful, beautiful relationship with her. But, in that first time, that time when I had that postnatal depression, like I really felt like she had been put on this planet to, mess everything up. And like, my relationship was great. And then, it wasn't. And then, I had these dreams in my world and my life and, just come and mess it up. And it's not a surprise that I felt like that because I felt isolated by society. I didn't have that many mums around me. I have beautiful friends, but in London, they're on the other side of London. We need people, people have got their own jobs and babies. And I felt so alone and isolated, which is one of the major components of what was going on, because our ancestors, we would have died if we
We
were
would have been in a
alone.
big community. Yeah, we would have been really
Exactly.
supporting each other, leaning on each other, and people are just next door.
And if you were out in the wild and you were left on your own, you would be toast. So it's like our
Yeah,
primal instinct needs us to have that co-regulation, that
yeah, we're
feeling of
wired for it.
belonging, also the feeling of acceptance as well, and being authentic and being able to be you as you are, and me to turn up and tell people I'm having a really bad time or she's driving me crazy. But I felt like I was around people that I was only friends with maybe because they had babies, or we all had our own stuff going on. We spend a lot of time alone, and then you didn't have that emotional vent, and then you'd store it inside. And I think that is another huge thing about the kind of healing process, is that because we are telling mums they need to be fine, happy, carry on, they are trying their best just to keep their heads swimming above the water. And that's what makes you feel like you're barely surviving. You're just ticking the boxes. And for me, I just constantly felt like I was swimming upstream, or the opposite way of everybody else. And now, because I have got more in tune with that innate wisdom inside of me, which I really blocked out, I've done a lot of breath work and therapy in working through the inner work that has made me being able to anchor and know that I can always come back to my breath. I can come back to my body. I can listen and kind of get this, what we call like more somatic healing, is is so powerful, because wherever you go, you will have that. you will always be able to connect to that anchor. So if I am spinning out because Indy's driving me nuts, I have my breath, even, a minute of breathing. I do it every single time before I go and pick her up, just taking the time to try and bring myself back to a state of connection and connection to myself first and foremost, and having the ability to then really recognize my wants, my needs. And what I work a lot with mums is they're allowed to dream. You can't, your dreams don't go away just because you have a baby. And honestly, if you're someone listening and just like, I am so in love with my baby and having the best time and this is my dream, then that is gorgeous too. And that is absolutely, I hand on heart, don't think there's anything more important in this world than you raising, the next generation of people. But there's a lot to be said about the mums who do want to have other things like their career or like their dreams they've always had. They don't just go away because you have a baby. And so the beauty of things like the kind of body up approaches that we talk about and do a lot more of is that's where you start to really connect to the true wisdom inside of you.
Amazing, Kim. It's been so, so good to hear your transformation and all the amazing tools that you've utilized. Is there any other final tools that we haven't touched on that you would like to just quickly mention before we wrap up?
The vagus nerve, I know you love to talk about as well, but it's probably quite a big topic. But even things like there's very quick vagus nerve exercises that you can do, very quick breathing exercises. Like even if mums today, I didn't really even know about the 4-7-8 breath. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale like you're breathing out for a small straw for 8. Even just doing quite a few rounds, or 3-4 rounds of those when you're feeling completely overwhelmed, so powerful. And it is so easy to be like, well, I don't have time to breathe. I don't have time to meditate. It doesn't have to be long. It can literally be 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Journaling is huge for getting everything from your head down onto a page, seeing what's the stories, what your needs are. If you haven't got someone to vent to, then your notepad is there and you can kind of have that offload. There's so many, but I'm aware that we have to be aware of time.
We do. But I think that the important next step for people to take will be to reach out to you. So where can people find out more about you?
I am very active on Instagram, Kim Hartwell, KIMHARTWELL, but also on my website, kimhartwell.com. And you can sign up to my newsletter where I keep all of my community updated there. And that's where I'll be releasing more information about the course when I release it, but also we'll be doing a lot of kind of freebies, content, and chat about this stuff. And yeah, I'm really open to the conversation. So even in the email, my e-box is always open to have these sorts of chats.
Amazing. And if you had one message for the world, what would your message be?
The greatest gift that you can give to others is a regulated nervous system.
And let's learn more about the nervous system, everyone.
It's so cool and it's so fundamental. My goodness. Thank you so much for having me, Sally.
It's a big pleasure, my lovely Kimmy. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of your wisdom. I know for a fact you're going to be helping a lot of people.